Hey everyone, today we're going to run through the steps on how to replace the drive belt on your LegExx device. There's three main parts here. We're going to detach from the drive shaft. We're going to loop around from the wheel here that's connected to the arm. And then we will weave it out of and then back through this fork and belt stop. So for our first step, in replacing our drive belt, we're going to have to remove the drive belt from our drive shaft here. You can see that the drive belt will enter the shaft through a slot here, and it'll come out on the other end, which we are going to have to pop out because there's a pin that locks it in place. So we can move this and pull it through all these other components. And so I have an Allen key here, or you can use something pointy to reach around and push through that gap. And then it'll pop out there. So you should be able to grab this end of the drive belt and pull out the pin. And that'll release it. Okay. Now that we've removed the drive belt from the drive shaft, we keep our pin here. Make sure that we don't lose this, as we will need it to reconnect. But the next step is to pull the drive belt over this wheel, and we will also release it from the fork and belt stop here. As you can see here, you will need to weave the drive belt over the pin and through the fork, which is good to remember for when we reattach the new, and it'll pull through the under here. And we can remove it like so. And then you have your old drive belt, and we'll go on to replacing with the new. All right, so here we have our new drive belt. And after we get it unraveled, and so we will take the branded end here, and just like before, we're going to place the drive belt over the pin, but through the fork. And then we will lift the pin here and place it back under. And so you can kind of see through, over, and under the pin there. And we'll pull that through this end. And this is how you will adjust the length of your drive belt. And continuing on to the next step of applying your new drive belt, you'll take the end here, and we're going to weave over the wheel that's connected to the arm of your LegExx. And it'll just go over and through the bottom here. And we want to make sure that it's straight as well. Twists here can cause some friction and issues. So once we weave it through, we just want to make sure it's straight before we continue on to the final step, which will be reattaching to the drive shaft. And on to the final step. Again, you want to make sure that you have no twist when you reattach your drive belt to the drive shaft. So I like to follow just along here and make sure that we are attaching it the correct way. And just the reverse of before, what we did to detach it, there is a thinner end on the drive shaft in which you'll put the drive belt through, and it'll come out of the wider end. And that is where we will lock the drive belt with the lock pin back in here. And so what we can do is find the thinner end and make sure we got that. We'll weave it through. And when it comes out of the other end, you can grab hold of that. We're going to put the pin here, like so. We're going to fold the drive belt over. And just as a rule of thumb, I like to make sure it's just about the length folded over of my thumbnail. And we will pull through, and as close as you can get to that part on the drive shaft where you're going to pull through, and then we're just going to give it a yank. And that should lock it into place there. And that is how you can replace the drive belt on your LegExx device.